The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Jeff Banks Bet. Get up to £500 refunded as real money for new Jeff Banks online accounts after your first month of betting. Use promo code FFP500 at jeffbanks.bet. And by BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Our listeners get 10% off your first month. So give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/FURLONG.
Get your notepad at the ready. Get your horse tracker at the ready, because we have got winners galore from a man who is involved with some of the most brilliant racehorses and has got all the big connections in the bloodstock world as well. One of the top bloodstock agents in racing, Tom Malone. Welcome to the Final Furlong podcast.
Cheers, pal. Well done.
No pressure now after that intro. But I mean, look, your name is synonymous with success. You're connected to some of the biggest owners, some of the biggest trainers, and you've sourced some of the best horses in the business as well. Just very briefly on that, you were a jockey. You've gone into the world of being a bloodstock agent. You make it look easy, but it's anything but.
Well, as someone said to me one day, he said, "What do you do when you're not at the sales?" And I said, well, that's such an ignorant response because to do this job, it's 8 days a week, not 7, it's 8 days a week. There is racing happening in Germany, France, Ireland. It's unbelievably fast. It happens, and you need a team around you, and I have a brilliant team, and over 15 years I've built it up to the point where I'd say we miss nothing, but very, very little is missed. So we just, it's just by pure repetition and keeping on top of it, you find them fast horses.
Well, there's some names that are just associated with success. Harold Kirk would be one. Obviously yours is very much up there as well, Anthony Bromley, for that matter. But I'm just fascinated by what goes into the process of sourcing a racehorse, and I'm going to get to some of the names of the horses that you've got for us to look forward to this season, and hopefully there's winners galore in there. But when you're at the sales and you're looking at a racehorse, what exactly is it you're trying to see? I can see an attractive racehorse, but what is it you're looking for?
Well, look, to start with, I buy between 130 and 150 horses a year, right? They're not all bought at sales.
Okay.
I would say it's probably 60% sale, 40% private. So there's horses that you won't have even heard of or seen coming from a far out place, potentially. You know, if you're on top of the Pint of Pints or maybe the provinces in France or flat racing in Germany, you might have heard of them. But, you know, it's not just all about the sales. Like people, this myth of us going to a sale just to buy a horse, there is so much more happening outside of a sale. The sale is a beautiful place because they're all in one spot. So I can go to Goff's or Fairy House, or I can go to Tattersall's in Newmarket, and to me that's an easier part of my job because they're all into one place. So that's how that part of the sales work. You could have 400 to 500 horses, to which normally at least 3/4 of them I will see. At least 3/4. There are some on pedigree that they won't suit, but they'll still be seen before they go in the ring. And then it's being on top of all the Pint of Pints every weekend, making sure each day I know from the minute I get up in the morning what time the races are happening in France. So my team put them in front of me to make sure that at 2:05 in Angers, there's a 3-year-old AQPS race. Don't miss it. So I know my schedule throughout the day, where I've got to be, because if these eyes don't see it, how can I ring up an owner and say, you must buy this, this is a weapon? It's that first initial thing, being the quickest to the door as well. And that's the other key. I like being the quickest to the door.
And some of those French races, I mean, that's something that Paul Nicholls has had a huge amount of success with. Some of his best horses have Cotto Star, obviously. But Clantasoba would have come from there as well.
100%. Now, you know, people, I remember when I first started with Paul, maybe 5 years into it, people were saying, oh, why aren't you getting all these good horses anymore from France and all that? But it changed in France. You know, when Paul got Cotto Star, they were big money purchases, but they're not big money purchases in today's climate. You know what I mean? They were still big money, but they had Group 1, Grade 1 winning and placed form over jumps in France. Masterminded, graded form in France. Big Bucks, graded form in France. They were unbelievably brilliant already. Whereas fast forward 15 years, 20 years now, you have Willie Mullins, you have Gordon Elliott, Henry de Bromhead, Paul Nichols, Nicky Henderson, all fighting to find Caught Star. But the problem with finding Caught Star, you're not finding Caught Star. You're hoping you have found the potential of Caught Star. He's had one run. Mm-hmm. So you're having to take a lot more chances early in their career. Maybe their first start as a 3-year-old. There's very few good horses coming to the market now that have ran 5 or 6 times. The last one, I might be stand corrected, that had ran plenty and had a nice level of form was Frodon. Now, there might have been a few more since, but in my head, he's the last one I remember had, I want to say he had 5 or 6, 7 runs in France as a juvenile. And he became on the market at the end of that season, and he became Frodon. But he was an okay juvenile. He started a career once he got to 5, 6, and 7 in England. So it's not that we're not finding Caught Star. It's there's so many more people fighting over the one pot. I
could be wrong about this, but off the top of my head, and I could look this up, but then if I did, I'd have to be typing into the computer and all. Vautour, I'm pretty sure it had a number of runs before he managed to become the horse he did.
Well, he was still a maiden. No, I think, and no, just that we're doing it now, because that would annoy me, same as it's annoyed you. Vautour, here we go. So Vautour, his first few runs, and they were quite clever. They did not want to lose this horse in France. I think he ran him. He was second in pole in December, so as a 3-year-old.
He'd only had the 2.
He would have went 2 or 5. Yeah. So he was second in pole down, and then went to Altea and finished second as a 4-year-old. And then the boys went in and bought him. But McCare, I think it was Guillaume McCare.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
He did not want that horse to be sold, and he is in my top 3 or 4 horses of all time. Vautour. I absolutely adored that horse. I adored him. I thought, God forbid the accident that happened to him, he was the most sensational animal to glide through the air. Like, hard to say he'd have been up there with some of the best, but given another 2 or 3 years, I think he probably would have been. He could just do things. He could do things horses just couldn't. They couldn't lie up with him. They couldn't jump with him. Like, I don't think we even seen him at his best when Q-Card beat him in the King George. I don't think we seen that horse. The day he won the Ryanair, I went, wow, this horse just glided through the air. Special animal.
Well, the reaction from Rich Ritchie told you everything, because he looked like he needed to go and have a good lie down for himself and go, oh my God, I could have won the Gold Cup. But everything he was being told was, and look, there's no reason to think anything other than that's exactly what was going on. The horse was not performing. I think David Casey tells the story that he had to ring Willie in Cheltenham going, I think you've made a mistake. I think you should send this guy over. All of a sudden he's thriving. And that was the weekend before Cheltenham.
All I'd heard for 10 days, I'll never forget that, because I ended up having a huge bet on the horse, right? And I know, do you know why I had the huge bet? Because I'd heard that this horse's head was on the floor, he was in bits, it was going nowhere. And then the Morning Line done a feature at the 9 o'clock show, and Ruby Walsh was riding Vautour in the middle of the ring, in the middle of Cheltenham. And he was stepping out to his chin with his ears pricked, and I said, there ain't much wrong with him right now, I can tell you. And that was the reason I had a big bet on him that day, because that horse was he may have recovered quickly from what they'd seen the week before, but he was in the pink belt that day. The day he went to Cheltenham, and that morning that he was going to run the Ryanair, the Morning Line were on him, and Ruby was standing bolt upright in the saddle whilst he was trotting with his ears pricked. I thought, that looks a healthy, happy horse. And I had a big bet on him that day because of it.
As a jockey and as a bloodstock expert, I should after time as well and say I also had a massive bet on him that day, way too big. I did a double, which was just stupid of me. Came off.
I can always never get my head around that. It's hard enough to get one. You boys want to get 2 or 3 of them to win.
I'll tell you what it was. I'd been out drinking the night before in Barry's in Douglas with friends of mine. We'd been to Cheltenham for the Tuesday and the Wednesday. We were back, and we had a few quid in the pocket, and I was just feeling a little bit too bullish, and I kept looking at the price and going, but he's going to win and Thistlecrack's going to win. This is an easy game. They both win. And as the night went on, I kept going into the Paddy Power and the Ball Sports and kept backing them like dum-dums, and then woke up the next day and was like, oh my God, what have I done? But Thankfully, it worked out. It hasn't always worked out that way, but that one did.
I never open my account when I'm drinking.
Oh, this was worse. This was, you couldn't cash it out. This was over the counter. Such a stupid thing to do. But anyway, we live to fight another day, thankfully. But just very briefly before I talk to you about these hopefully multitude of winners to come for the rest of the season, that reminds me of him coming alive at Cheltenham, but also Ruby Walsh talking about Don Poli, who he wasn't riding, but he was going for the Martin Pipe and saying, this is a lazy sod, he does nothing at Clotilda, but he's come alive at Cheltenham. And I just wonder, what is it about Cheltenham Racecourse that when horses are there, the Irish horses based for the week, why do some of them, like Don Poli, just suddenly come alive there?
I actually don't think it's Cheltenham. I think it's a different place. Because when you're around animals and ride them like we all do and whatnot, it's not the actual race course, it's a race course. So if he was somewhere else, he'd probably woken up as well. Right, he's there with 40 of his mates from Clotilda, that's great, right? Like that might be that, but knowing horses at home, and then when they go to the races, they can be two different animals. And that's why I've got to be very careful. When people are giving me information, when I go to all these yards, I judge the person nearly as much as the horse.
Right.
Because I need to know, when that person tells me, I have a weapon, he's right more often than he's not. And then there's some yards you go into, everyone's a weapon. Everything's a machine.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah, but they believe it.
Oh, okay. They're not, this isn't a sales pitch. They actually genuinely have.
They actually genuinely believe it. So they're not putting you away. And this is the thing. My job is more about dealing with the people, and then the horse, sometimes, is knowing that when someone rings me up that's selective and says, this is the one, I have to stand up and take notice. And then the ones, when I get to know them, when I say, everything's a machine, you're going to lose me here now. In my mind, you're going to lose me, because I can't decipher if you've got a good one or an ordinary one. I love people who grade their horses. Because remember, I like to buy horses at every level.
Yeah.
So if they grade them at every level, and they can be wrong, but they won't be wrong over a period of 10 years.
Yeah.
So we'll win together over 10 years. Do you know what I mean? It's not about one horse. It's about a period.
Yeah. I had Richard Pugh on the show last year. I absolutely loved his insight. Richard has taken a job at HRI, which means it's a little bit more difficult to be getting his insight on the point-to-point scene now. And I wish him well with that.
When I just started, I was commentating, and it was Richard that got me to do a bit of commentary. So I've known Richard since ever I started riding horses 25 years ago. And we used to sit on a Sunday evening when I'd come home to see the animals. We'd sit and go through all the videos nearly before the Point to Point website. So I know Richard Pugh as well as anyone. I've stayed with them more often than not.
He's a real gentleman. You know him an awful lot better than me now, but I really appreciated his insight last year. But one of the points he was making was there was a report commissioned by the BHA, and it came to the conclusion that the British horse racing industry has an over-reliance on the Irish point-to-point scene. So we can look at the ex-French horses, the one or two ex-flat horses these days, because that's a very difficult thing to get nowadays, given the jurisdictions in Australia and America that want those flat horses. But it's the Irish point-to-point scene that really dominates. Why do you think that is? Why are Irish point-to-pointers so sought after?
It does dominate because we have, it's the chicken and egg situation, is that you have the boutique sales. Now the boutique sales really took off in earnest about at least 10 years, maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And there was 2 or 3 of them a year. So we'll have 50 horses, the best we can find, which is brilliant. Now you have one every 10 days. And 2 or 3 sales companies fighting with each other over 5 or 6 years, and then add another one. So then they'd have to retaliate and add another one. And before long, you have a sale every 10 days with 30 horses. Now, it's the luck of the draw then for that sales company, what happens in the previous weekend at a point sometimes. Do you know, so it's by pure luck if 5 roll out in Tatterstalls or Bartlemy or Linkstown, if it's what happens the Sunday before. And of course, now I'm very aggressive at trying to do a deal before it gets to a sale. So now they have me a thorn in their side as well. So it's not, it's because there's so much of a want for instant access. There's a group of young men producing horses now that are my age, in their middle, late 30s, early 40s, that are producing these at a rate not. They may have between 50 and 100 in their stables. They're all nearly congregated in Wexford, in one county, and there's loads of others, but for the actual population of point-to-pointers, there are more in Wexford than maybe the rest of the country, potentially the rest of the country. So it's a difficult one, but the reason it's working is because them guys know they can go to a new sale 10 days later and the wheel keeps turning, and people need instant access.
So if you've seen a point-to-pointer win by 10 lengths, everybody else has seen that as well, or at least the people on your level have seen it. And so there's an interest in securing that horse because someone's going to want him. And if that horse is entered in a sale, is that where the private sale comes in? You have to go in and persuade that trainer, no, don't take him to the sale. Do it this way.
Yeah, and listen, so if he wins on a Sunday, and let's say the sale is 10 days after that, or worse luck, it's that Friday. So it's 5 days after. If the beauty of what I do is in January, I spend about 7 days on 2 or 3 trips in Ireland. And I'll see 400 point-to-pointers. And I will take notes and pictures and videos of every single one of them. I have books going back 10 years. I have notes on every single horse I think I've ever seen, right? So I already know that if I haven't managed to get to Ireland for that point-to-point, I can sit in my office with a cup of coffee. The decks come alive an hour before the point-to-point starts. I know exactly what's entered in the week anyway, and then I know what's declared. And there are Sundays where I go, 9 runners. I liked 5 of them. And I'm going, now we're on to something. Now we're getting juicy. Or the opposite. There's only really 2 I liked in that race, so I let it unfold. So I'm already in a position to say, I'll have that horse here. Let's talk this evening. Let's sort a deal out this evening and get it done. As opposed to on a Sunday evening then saying, I wonder, is he tall, thin, fat, slobby, good mover? I've already all this done.
Yeah.
Everything is in my head. I know what I want to think of that horse. Now he just has to prove he's good enough. So I don't have to get on a plane on Sunday evening, Monday morning, to which if he's the right one, he's gone by Monday afternoon. So I'm late. I've already got this information ready at my hand. The minute he bounces, I'm in a position to say, yes, I'll have him. That's the difference.
How much of this is this is a point Adam Mills made on the show. I could steal this from my own, but I don't think it's very fair. Adam is a French horse racing expert and does some fantastic insight on X and has provided some...
he is unbelievable. He is, yeah.
The knowledge that man has just astounds me every time I speak to him. And I love talking to him, and we'll have him back on the show very, very soon. But he was saying to me he had a theory that the value really lies in the horses who were beaten in those races in France. Presumably, as long as there's enough, they're unfurnished, there's plenty more to come from them. His overall point was, and I'm going to dumb this down and probably sound like a dum-dum as I'm saying it, but how do you assess between a massive amount of potential that a racehorse has who's just won an Irish point-to-point or a race in France versus you've won because you're hard fit and the others aren't? So how is that even an easy thing to work out?
It's not that it's an easy thing to work out. It's something I definitely think about every time.
Okay.
There are yards. If they win 15 lengths, they're just better than the rest. If they win a short head and they're from a yard that they're ready, and potentially the second or third has more to improve, that's down to my judgment call on the day. Because there's been plenty of times I have not bought the winner and I have bought the best horse out of the race. There's been a lot of times. So you don't have to buy the winner. The thing about the Irish point-to-point winner is that, for instance, in England, in an English point-to-point, when you go, we'll say the average of the actual race, let's say it's a 4-year-old maiden, the average is 20-25 grand in the paddock. So let's say the race is worth, there's 8 runners, the race is worth 200 grand. On paper, that's what it stands in there. When I go to Ireland to a Irish point-to-point, it could be 600 to £1 million worth of stock walking around the ring. That's the difference.
Bloody hell.
And that's before they've ran or won. So you have 70, 80 grand stores walking around in a paddock in Ireland. Very rare you'll have a 70 or 80 grand store walking around a paddock in England. So you know that they are concentrated there and they have lots of them, but they have lots of quality as well because they've gone and given 70, 80 grand as a store.
Right.
So I already know, because I'll have seen them all as 3-year-olds. So I already know what I thought of them as a 3-year-old. And then I'll have seen them in January/February in Ireland. So I'll have seen the progress they've made in 6 months. And then the trainers who have had them for 6-8 months will tell me, he's brilliant, he's okay, he's not very good, and vice versa. So it's a process. From the first day I see them as 3-year-olds, I can then follow their career on where they end up in 6, 12, 18 months' time.
Well, that's the industry, and it's one that's not exactly thriving, but there's still a lot of horses to be excited about. There's a lot to be very excited about for the new jump season as well, and some of them are horses that Tom Malone knows very, very well. So let's get the inside scoop from Tom on a couple of horses. I'm going to start with one that's very well known at this point. Johnny De La Haye's had a lot of fun with Captain Teague, placed in a champion bumper, won the Challow Hurdle, won on debut in a Grade 2 in the Persian War, probably should have won on his second start over hurdles. Hooray! Not often you can criticise Harry Cobden for a ride. In fairness, the guy's absolute mustard, but he was brilliant in the Challow. And then, for whatever reason, Challow Hurdle winners just don't win at the Cheltenham Festival. I don't know why. But that wasn't really his true performance.
No, nowhere near. Put that myth to one side, because it's not a myth because it happens, but he got a little issue in his feet after the Challow, and he was never really right in the spring. But needless to say, he's back rocking and rolling and ready for a novice chase campaign this season.
And he has all the tools required to be a really good chaser.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, well, it's like the one thing, having worked for Paul for so many years, is that he can, when they're strong enough to take his regime, not that his regime is hard, but it takes a strong horse to get to it. That's why you see Paul's horses careering when they start to go chasing, because they're a couple or 3 years older. He's had them then for 2 to 3 years, and he's worked them out, and they're strong enough to get really fit, and then they're neon unstoppable once he has them there. So yeah, Captain Teague hopefully now has a bright future ahead of him over fences. What
would you think his trip is going to be? His final run was over 3 miles in the potato race, but what do you see him being as a chaser?
Well, look, it's not going to get to that to start with, but he definitely stays. The one good thing is he travels. And he's proven, look, I don't know about trip, but he's probably going to want 2.5 plus anyway.
Okay. One that might not be as well known is Regent Stroll. So we saw him twice last year, unbeaten in 2 bumpers. He's from the family of Denman. I believe that's one of the most, if not the most valuable bumper run in the world, Britain and Ireland, really. But what's the latest with him?
It's the most valuable bumper, and then after that event, the most valuable horse sold at public auction. So myself and Paul bought him in Doncaster as a store. We gave a sizable 6-figure sum for him as a store, and he then went and won his bumper first time out. And Paul saved him then for the DBS bumper. It was a 100-gram bumper. And the plan was obviously to go hurdling this year, and in the meantime he's been sold to existing owners.
And that was the dispersal, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the Chris Childs dispersal in Doncaster, but thankfully we got to keep him anyway.
So obviously novice hurdling is going to be the campaign, but if you're from the family of Denman, the only thing you can think of really is chasing. But what do you think he'll make up to as a novice hurdler this season?
Well, look, we like him. He's done nothing wrong. He has the physical to be a brilliant chaser. But let me tell you, the best bumper horses are the best novice hurdlers, are the best novice chasers. So the good ones are just good all the time. So he should be one of the top handful or so in England this year. So that's going to take you to all them nice graded races and maybe even a trip to the Shallow.
This is going to sound like a cliche, but is it almost a case of that whatever he does over hurdles is a bonus, because really he'll be a chaser?
Yes, he will, but he'll be very good over hurdles. So he's already been very good in bumpers. If you were waiting for chasing, he wouldn't have won 2 bumpers, would he?
True.
And he hit the line really hard at Newbury that day. In actual fact, that's where he gets strong in the last 2 furlongs. That's really where he can extend and extend and extend. And he's quite a nice horse. So look, it won't matter where he goes first time out. He'll be just taken away for a nice maiden novice hurdle somewhere and then work from there. But you can see him maybe not just going for a grade 2 first, but he might just end up and then go from strength to strength from there, hopefully.
So he has the potential to be one of Paul's leading novice hurdlers this season.
Yes.
That's what we like to hear. Regent, Stroll, back blindly, first time at gamble responsibly and all that. Nardaran by Voltgeist, the Arc winner out of a Dubawi mare. One race in France for Gaffard, third in a 12 furlong maiden for unraced 3-year-olds at Saint-Cloud on very soft ground, and bought for 135 grand recently.
Yeah, look, I love the animal when I seen him at the sales, and I actually rang looking to see if I could buy him after the run to see if he'd be for sale, and it wasn't, and then he ended up at the sales. So I don't think the race probably doesn't look Saint-Cloud standard right now, but it's an acceptable standard, and this horse looks like a bloody beautiful chaser in the making. So for him to show up that well on that ground as a 3-year-old, we were happy to take a chance, and he's been bought for Sir Martin Broughton and friends, and they've owned Dodging Bullets, Jackpot, the Bordes. They've owned plenty, so they're in charge of this one.
So you're looking at juvenile hurdle campaign, given those owners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Now, he's probably not your typical flat horse to go jumping, but he'll have some fun along the way to do it, and maybe the summer's grass. See, that's the other thing. When we buy them early, if we can buy them early in the spring, we can give them a summer's grass, so that they've had an extra 6 months of whoa now, we need you in 3 years' time. We don't need you all to be done now. So we like that route. It's worked well for us.
And they get the chance to acclimatize, but also they get to grow into their physique as well that bit more.
Yeah, and they're not being jarred up on quicker ground in the middle of the summer. That's a big thing.
Just on a horse of that pedigree, it's pretty rare that we're seeing these ex-flat horses go jumping now, because there's such demand in Australia, Hong Kong, America to get hold of them. How difficult is it to get a horse like that these days for jumping? Well,
he probably, as stupid as it sounds, he probably didn't hit the lists of Australia and that, because he may not have shown enough speed for them, and the fact it was heavy ground or soft ground, their ground over there is quite quick, so they like a nippier type of a horse. Like one I got last year was a horse called Liari, and he's proper. Now, he won his first 3 juveniles, and the wheels fell off a little bit in the spring, but he's proper.
Okay, Liari.
They can back him wherever he goes first time out.
Oh, dearie me. Can we get a spelling on that, please?
Liari.
I remember him.
Yeah, he's a proper horse.
I remember him. All right, he's going into the tracker as one to black.
He came from the Aga Khan as well, and we managed to buy him privately. Like, it was pure luck that I've been chasing the horse. He was second in his maiden. He then won his maiden, and I tried to buy him after he was second, and Jean-Claude had said that this was a black type horse on the flat. And sure, of course, Mess and I threw a bid in on him. And they said, "Oh, stop, will you please? Don't laugh at us. He's worth nearly a 7-figure sum at that time." Ooh. And I went, "Okay." Then he went and won his maiden, and I messed again and sent a message saying, "So I suppose there's no chance of buying him now." 4 weeks after that, he went in a conditions race. Now, he'd been making it in his maiden. He jumped out, dropped his hands, and made it. It was a 5-runner conditions race. And he come out of stalls, and I don't know what happened with the jockey. He decided to drop him in last of 5, and they crawled. And this thing's 16-3, maybe even be 17 hands now. And they turned for home with 300 or 400 meters to go, and they quickened away from him. But once he opened his stride, he flew at them, and he was still 5th of 5, only beaten 2 lengths. 100 yards after the line, he couldn't pull him up. And I thought, wow. So I threw my same bid in, and they accepted it. So I shouldn't own that horse. He should be flat racing somewhere. That horse should be flat racing somewhere. So we were very lucky to get our hands on him now. He's a very exciting horse for the future.
He ended up going off a very short price for the Martin Pipe. Sorry, not the Martin Pipe.
Fred Winter.
The Fred Winter, yeah. David has won that race a couple of times, and it was already in the head. Things didn't pan out from that day, but the ground was awful, and most of the horses didn't finish.
But he had won on heavy ground the couple of days in. It was unraceable in Aintree the day he won. So
That's
the ground
true.
wasn't the favorite. Just everything just kind of didn't happen on the day. He didn't jump like he can. It just all happened a bit too much, and he was big and weak looking. But he's a different animal this year.
Okay. All right. Because I think most people are just going to go, oh, he's bombed out, forget him. But I'm always fascinated when a horse is being sent off that kind of price for a big race at Cheltenham. And they're all big races at Cheltenham.
He was 3 from 3. Before he went there, he was 3 from 3. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Over hurdles.
He won in Musselburgh as well.
He deserved to go off favourite. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully we'll get a nice price the night before, and then we can all steam in and he'll go off a well-backed favourite. Liari, definitely want to be watching out for this, a bonus mention. Where do you think we'll see, just to go back to Nardaran, where do you think we'll see him first?
Look, whenever he's ready, Paul's in no hurry to rush the like of him, but he could end up he could go to Chepstow or somewhere like that. You wouldn't know. There was no definitive plan about where he'd go, but whenever he's ready, he'll run.
The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Jeff Banks Bet, where tradition meets cutting-edge technology, and with major flat racing festivals on the horizon and the new jump season about to kick off properly, it's time to leave behind the corporate bookmakers who don't value your loyalty. At this point, you've got to be fed up with their restrictions, endless affordability checks, and losing out on incentives just because you dare to win a bet. Jeff is the bookmaker fighting for your right to bet, giving you the freedom to enjoy British and Irish racing the way it should be, and you can watch all that racing on the Jeff Banks Bet app. So say goodbye to bookies who want you to lose your hard-earned money on their online casinos, and say yes to unbeatable odds and a bookmaker that truly values your custom, Jeff Banks Bet. Final Furlong podcast listeners who sign up to Jeff Banks Online using the promo code FFP500 can get 10% of any net losses returned as cash after your first month of betting up to £500. It's an offer you won't see anywhere else. Visit jeffbanks.bet today and enter promo code FFP500 and join the excitement. That's jeffbanks.bet using promo code FFP500, because your betting experience deserves more.
Not my work. This is from Paul Ferguson's Horses to Follow guide. It's from Shirley Anderson Jalog. She said, Bellario really caught my eye, and Paul is very much looking forward to his debut under rules in the coming season. A fine big scopy gelding, I'm told.
Yeah, he was. He won in Bulta, and he done something that day that it gets very heavy there, and it's quite sharp, the track. And he just come round 4 or 5 horses and quick and clear. Now, admittedly, the race kind of fell apart at one stage, but he was quickening past all the carnage anyway, and he won very well. We had to give a good price for him in Cheltenham, and thankfully, he just took a bit of time to come in the spring. So he didn't rush him. He didn't want to rush him. And he gave him all of the summer to acclimatise. And he's back in and going well now. So hopefully a novice hurdle there at some stage in the next month or 6 weeks would be lovely.
Okay. What kind of a level do you think he'll reach this season?
So look, they have to. He's gone and won his point to point like a good horse. We paid for him like a good horse. So now he's got to go and prove it. But he's doing everything right. And he's owned by Brian Drew and Paul Vogt, and 2 big owners and good owners in the yard. So what level he'll end up, he'll tell us after his first run, but we hope he goes and wins his maiden hurdle, and then that'll tell us exactly where we're going.
Well, they're looking for their next Bravemansgame, so could he possibly scale those kind of heights?
So look, Bravemansgame got beaten his first 2 bumpers.
True.
Do you know what I mean? I remember we went to Ascot with Bravemansgame, and it was the last race on the card. It was nearly getting dark. And you'd swear Bravemansgame had never seen a saddle. He started whinnying and rearing, and I was going, what is wrong with you, horse? You've been point to point all last year. But it took him a year till he went hurdling. So he run in 2 bumpers and got beaten 2 bumpers. So it's not just about day one. It's about the progress, about how you get into the future. And that's where Paul is brilliant.
Yeah, he's an absolute genius. There's no question about that. Jakar de Moulin. So
Jakar de Moulin.
Even better pronunciation. So you paid 175,000 for him. He's come from the Donncha Doyle production line.
We've been very lucky with Donncha. Bought some fabulous horses off him. the one that got away, the one, not this horse, but Donegal Doyle, when I think about him, Factophile, there's one that got away. Not that he got away, but I should have been in the fight more than I was. But anyway.
So my understanding on Factophile is that he won, and then there was this frenzy of private bidding, and Frank Berry was the man who came out on top. But that it was all done. There was no sales. It was all done private bidding, and everyone was trying to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's how quickly. And he won this race that Factophile won, Jakar de Moulin. He won the same race in Bell Harbour.
So this is, and I'm pretty certain that's a race that's been won by some other good horses over the years as well.
Well, normally the 4-year-old. So Factophile, if I'm correct now, didn't get to Bell Harbour till he was 5. This horse was the same. Whereas the 4-year-old, the race before, normally can throw up real good 4-year-old. It's always the first one. It's the first one in February, and everyone kind of lines with Pat Doyle would line one up for it. James Doyle, there's plenty of lads that like to line one up for the first 4-year-old maiden of the year. But yeah, we bought this lad. He won the 5-year-old maiden on the day. Lovely horse, goes up over Ditchet Hill like it's not there. So that's encouraging.
He was a strong even money favourite for a point-to-point race as well. Again, the betting can tell you an awful lot about what to expect from him.
There was only 4 runners, and you couldn't look at the race and say from a form point of view, "Oh wow, yeah." But you know, the horse went there. He done it for first time out, and he done it well in command. And he's a beautiful horse. And Paul loves the stallion. And Colm Donlan has bought it. So yeah, the future's bright.
Capguard has been doing exceptionally well. He's produced a number of pretty decent horses. At Plutard, I'd say, you know, he was all right. Clan de Soba, he was all right. Fakir Dudery,
Exactly. Yeah.
He's become one of the sought after national stallions now.
Yeah, like all them national stallions, it's not till they're very, very old they can become very good. So then you're trying to gather up what you can get off them. But Paul's done well with their stock. They suit his system, so they must be tough.
So what would you expect from Jakar de Moulin this year then? Is he going to be starting off in a bumper and then going novice hurdling, or would he be given a full bumper campaign?
No, I'd say he's 5 rising 6. I'd say, I'm not 100% sure, but the likes of them 5-year-olds we go on over novice. We only really do the bumpers because they're 4-year-olds. Do you know what I mean? So when they're 5 like him, we'd normally crack on over hurdles. And
obviously a different type, but Factophile skipped the novice hurdle campaign, and that worked out all right.
Yeah, well, but did he? How long was it before he actually ran for Willie? I think was he a year older anyway after that?
I think from memory he was given the typical Willie Mullins 365 days off to settle in.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to
I think first run was a 6-year-old. I might be wrong.
A 324 day break from his point-to-point win to his debut at the Leopardstown Christmas meeting. So yeah, he was trying to make up for a bit of lost time with that fellow. And makes sense. All right, Jakar de Moulin, definitely a horse that we're going to be keeping a very, very close eye on. Pronunciation is going to be all over the place on this one. Clotilda, perfect. Yeah, spot on. You got it. Clotilda, I bought her on the Octave sale last week. So she is one that comes into the country. I think she's rated 128, and she's still a maiden. So for a juvenile filly, she is a no-brainer to me. She's ran 5 times over hurdles and 3 times over fences. So we've sold her to Mr. and Mrs. Stadden. They have Lallygag and they had Laylor. Lovely old people. And that's a filly that's hopefully she'll be ready to run there in 4 or 6 weeks' time, and she'll be ready to do her job and win. Yeah, placed in a few hurdle starts, but placed in 3 juvenile chases in her native France, so she's going to know her job as well.
She's only a 3-year-old, and she's ran 8 times over jumps already. So you put the likes of her up against the juvenile off the flat, which one's going to go there and just attack a jump straight away and get the job done early? It's more than likely her.
I would like to think so. Ile Francaise trainer had Miss Altea Blue, Noel George and Amanda Sederholm. But you've managed to get hold of this filly.
Yeah, she is actually travelling tomorrow. So we have just bought her. She has exceptional form, or at least high quality form. She's ran in 4 hurdle races, 3 of them at Auteuil and 1 at Compiègne. And I was there when she was second over hurdles in Auteuil, and she was headed in the last 100 yards, probably set sail for home, but they thought an awful lot of her, and I know deep down they didn't want to lose her. It was just circumstances allowed us to be able to buy her.
Do you feel that's, given the total lack of prize money in Britain versus the massive amounts of prize money there is in France, do you think that that's something there's going to be more Ile Français, more horses that actually stay in France to then compete in the UK?
Well, Ile Français is a peculiar one because the breeder sold half of it to Richard and Lizzie Kelvin Hughes. It wasn't a case that it was never allowed to be exported. So they either bought into it and they enjoyed him in France. Yes, he might come to England to run like he did last year in the KO Star, but he wasn't for sale. So his breeder, he's a massive breeder, one of the biggest, Nicolas Lajeunesse in France. But it would appear that he is now wanting to retain the breeding and keep the strength of the animals in France. So he's not selling as much as he once did. I think they are getting to a point where the Irish are such brilliant pinhookers that they have pillaged and squandered around France, taking the best of their stock. And they've ended up in the Land Rover and the Goffs and the Derby Sale as 3-year-olds when they would have been running in France at 3. So there's a big shift over the last 10 years of the way that's happened. But a few of the breeders have now decided that we need to keep these horses. So they're trying their very best to keep half of them and sell half of them. And that alleviates and training fees and stuff like that. So.
Because I'm sure they get a great kick out of seeing Willie Mullins, Henry de Bromhead, Paul Nicholls, Gordon Elliott winning with these horses. But at the same time, they must be thinking, we don't want to be a production line. We don't want to be a feeding country. We want to be able to have our own horses.
It would appear it was like that for 10 years. Now I think it might have drained off them a bit. And they thought, no, we're just desecrating our breeding system here by letting these horses leave all the time.
Yeah,
I think that's how it's been looked upon now. Someone that I've studied it a bit, but there might be more people to say a different tone to it, but that's how I see it anyway.
Okay. Miss Altea Blue, when do you think she'll be ready to start for Paul?
She will. The plan would be, if she goes all according to plan, because if she was still in France, there was graded juvenile hurdle in Auteuil in 10 or 12 days' time. So I would have thought there'll be a race in November for her. I think Paul has earmarked one for her already.
Wow. Okay. She goes into the tracker as one to be following for a start in November for sure. And she's going to know her job as well. Talk to the man for Johnny Delahaye, £100,000 purchase. Again from that man, Donncha Doyle, won a point-to-point by over 3 lengths as a 6-4 favourite under Rob James.
The 3 lengths was 13 lengths, but it was 3 lengths. He is exceptional, this horse. He is very, very good. This horse was 100 grand as a store in Doncaster. So you could see him taking the Regent Stroll route now because he's eligible for that bumper.
Okay.
So he'll probably have a run in a bumper somewhere along the line there in November time and then go straight to the DBS bumper. I would have thought that would be the plan with him this year. But he's a very exciting horse. He's out of a sister to Lord Windermere. So he has the pedigree, he's by the stallion, and he has the performance. So for me, he ticks every box. And this is one of them horses we did not get beat on.
So when you're trying to secure a deal on a horse like that, you're getting this horse, how do you play your hand? Because you can't just give the game away. Well, whatever it is, we're paying. How do you approach a deal like that?
Like that? Look, Emmet, when you have a horse like him, you know he's going to be expensive because I pinpointed him 8-10 weeks previous to Johnny Delahaye. I told him, and there was 3 or 4 others along the way that we discussed, and I said, Johnny, I'm still holding out for this one horse. Let's wait for him. And then he won when we were in Sandown on the last day of the season. He won the same day. We were both, myself and Johnny Delahaye and Paul Nicholls, were in the car park listening to him winning whilst we were consider buying him as it was happening. And it was beautiful because when you pinpoint a horse like that, these are professional people.
Yeah.
You want it to happen for them as well so that they get that good feeling and say, yeah, let's get it bought. Now this is the one. So look, he has a he has a tall order to go on from here to be a brilliant horse, but he ticks more boxes right now than he doesn't. So we're quite excited by him.
I'm getting almost as excited as you are about Talk to the Man. All right, he's definitely going into the tracker, and we're blindly following him. You think it's going to be given his age, he's only 4, it'll be a bumper campaign this season?
Absolutely. We the likes of him, Johnny loves to give them time, so does Paul. And being that he's eligible for that one bumper, it would. Why wouldn't you just wait for it? It's too big a pot, especially when you have a trainer that might be charging forward for a trainers championship this year. 60 grand for a bumper would seem very nice.
He goes in. I imagine Paul Nicholls is very determined to fend off Willie Mullins and get back that title.
Look, he's going to do his best like he does every year, and if Luck has as part to play in it, that'd be brilliant. But he trains the horses first, and if it starts to fall into place, then that'll be brilliant. The horses have to stay healthy and fit and stay injury-free, and then we have a lot of lovely horses to go to war with this year. I mean, we've got an exciting bunch of bumper and novice hurdle horses. So these are really the future. They really are the future.
I can predict how this is going to play out, by the way. This is the same thing every year. Willie's going to get beaten early on in the first month or two, and people are going to go on podcasts and go, "Oh, Willie Mullins, he's finished. There's no chance of him winning the Trainers' Championship. Oh, Gordon might do him in Ireland." And then they'll just start rolling in Christmas. From Christmas on, it'll just be winner after winner after winner.
He doesn't tend to get too busy early, does he?
No. It'll be.
But he had an amazing, everything fell right in England from this year. I mean, everything. Nicky didn't win the champion hurdle. Nicky didn't win the Triumph hurdle.
Nicky's horses were all sick.
And Willie won the National. And Willie won the Scottish National. So everything fell right for him. Do you know,
and the Bet365.
Amazing achievement. Amazing. Brilliant. Good. Hats off to him. But, you'd be hard-pressed to see him having everything fall right for him again. Now, maybe it'll happen. Crazier things have happened, but he would need it to be the same. And the chances of Nicky's having the same sort of process, they're 600 grand, isn't it? Well, 500-600 grand that Nicky may have pulled back, because if Constitution Hill had ran, he'd have won. And if the other horse had ran, he'd have won. Sergino, wasn't it?
Sergino would have won. John Bond probably would have won the Champion Chase.
You've lots going on there to everything roll the right way. Do you know what I mean? So that said, it was a brilliant achievement. Fair play to him.
Oh, it was phenomenal to be champion trainer in both countries. It's as phenomenal as Aidan O'Brien doing it on the flat. It's ridiculous, and we look forward to seeing how it goes. But Paul Nicholls doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's just going to lie down and go, "Oh yeah, I guess Willie Mullins is champion."
No, and the other thing is he's won it 14 times. Obviously, he'd like to equal 15. Martin Pipe done 15, and that's where I started. I was with Martin Pipe for 7 years. So he'd like to equal him, and he did lose it twice to Nicky before, so it's not as if he hasn't lost it and regained it. So it's there, and he's as hungry as ever. My God, we could be ringing each other at 10 o'clock at night discussing a thing for 14 seconds, discussing a horse we're about to buy. It's just short, sweet, but by God, the phones are open every time.
I love to hear that. This is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp Therapy Online. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip leg day or therapy day. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you've no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. If you've ever been in therapy, then like me, you know how beneficial it can be. But it's not just for those who've experienced major trauma. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and setting boundaries. Therapy empowers you to be the best version of yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a registered therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. With almost 5,000 therapists in the UK already, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise. Visit betterhelp.com/furlong today to get 10% off your first month.
That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/furlong. This is a paid advertisement by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at BetterHelp.com/furlong to get 10% off your first month and get on your way to being your best self.
Let's move on to Active Innocence, a gelding who looked like he was going to cause a massive upset in the old Land Rover, the Goffs Defender bumper, as it's now known. Didn't really settle that well that day, and it probably paid the price for it towards the end, but looked a nice prospect, and you've got him.
Well, he was all set to... He was trained by Garrod O'Loughlin, and I know Garrod very well. And we'd been in to see the horse, loved the horse. And he's by my dream boat. I bought my dream boat as a flat horse, and he won the Prince of Wales in Royal Ascot. So I was as keen, given his stock, when he went to be a jump stallion. Now, it hasn't worked out very well, but this horse is a bit different. When I seen him, he said, look, I have him teed up and ready. He entered him the weekend before for a point. So he was ready to go to a point. So he's done all the schooling, everything's done, jumping, everything. And he just thought, this could be just exceptional, this horse. Why don't we take a blast at the Land Rover bumper? Now, for me, had he sat and suffered and waited, he'd have won the Land Rover bumper.
Yeah.
He just set sail for home too soon. And he was a gassy horse in the race, so he'd already used up a lot of energy and then showed that injection of speed, but just couldn't get there. It was still a beautiful run. 3rd of 25 in a bumper first time out. I'd take that every time. So really, really happy to have him. Gordon and Sue Hall are his owners. And on our trip, it was Punchestown. We went, myself, Paul and Nana went down and seen him, and we fell in love with him, and we managed to get the deal done and bought him.
And once he learns to settle, he'll be, I'd imagine, with obstacles in front of him as well, he could be a real weapon.
Fine. He wasn't keen. He wasn't an unrideable keen. He was just fresh, happy, and kind of buzzing. Do you know what I mean? Paul has a knack of teaching them to slow down, I can tell you. He'll get him to drop his head. Yeah. So it'll be fine.
Yeah, I suspect that won't be an issue for too much longer. Let's move on to Quanti, who Langer Dan's owner, I believe, has.
Yeah, Tutti Quanti.
Tutti Quanti, even. That might be a better pronunciation. Tutti Quanti.
Yeah. This is a beautiful, beautiful horse. We were livid, but in one sense, delighted in the end. We went to Taunton for a novice hurdle with him, and we got chinned on the line. We were only 4. We got chinned by a 5-year-old, one of JP's for Nicky Henderson.
Ex-French horse.
Joyeux. She's a half-sister to the champion hurdle winner. So we got beat by a proper pedigreed mare, and they were a long way clear of my horse in 3rd into the park. And he won 3 after that. Yeah. So this is a proper...
There's another horse that's come out and has won since from that race too.
Yeah, well, Into the Park was one that I bought for Philip Hobbs, and he was behind him. He got a small little injury that kept him off the rest of the spring. The best thing that ever happened to him, because now he's a novice for the season. If we'd have won back end, you'd be thinking handicaps again. But now he has that view, and he's talented. This horse, very talented.
So could he be a graded novice hurdler this season?
So look, I mean, I've given you a bunch of horses. It would sound, if I said they're all going to be graded novice hurdlers, like you'd sound like a right idiot, wouldn't you? But I'm sure they have the ability. They need the look and running and everything to go right for them. But this is a smart animal. Well,
he looks banker material for a maiden at the very least, anyway, and hopefully he'll be able to take the step up and make it integrated. Yeah. But from our selfish perspective, once he wins his maiden hurdle, he can do whatever he wants. Then after that, we've already made our money. Yeah. Jackpot de Bordes, another one for Paul.
Lovely, and we bought him as a store at the Land Rover, and he went and won first time out at Hereford for us. I think it was Hereford, and then he got beat. He was second to Celtic Dino, one of Sam Thomas's Walters, who had won at Ascot beforehand. So that's proper form.
They wanted to run him in the champion bumper, and the ground just went against them.
So nobody would... This isn't a well-known name horse, but they'll know him by the end of the season.
Okay. Jackpot the Boards. You can see the name on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Definitely want to follow. And one that we talked to Richard Pugh about was Teeshan, because he'd won his point-to-point by a million miles and then announced himself at Exeter, was really impressive, went to the champion bumper. It didn't quite happen for him, but there's been loads, like the potato rates, loads of horses get beaten there and then turn out to be proper horses afterwards. And well, he looks like he has the potential to be a proper horse.
He tanked in front in the champion bumper, and I was after having a big bet on him for the champion bumper, because I just know the ability is there, but he just got lit up. It all happened, and it all happened too much, and he was coming down the hill on the steel, and I was going, you're bloody Arkle if you get away with doing what you've just done. And of course he didn't, but he still ran well. He didn't get this, he didn't fall out of the screen. I want to say that he finished, I don't know, in the first 10 anyway. From doing what he actually done, it was a bloody good run. It was a good run, and he wasn't beaten a long way, so I don't think he was beaten miles either. So given what he'd done, he probably wasn't beaten that far. It was still a nice run, but he's one now that'll be a proper novice hurdler this year.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make, to given his pedigree as well by Westerner out of a wing glove mare. You'd imagine that, well, obstacles will improve him, but certainly based on what he did in his point-to-point, even if you wanted to criticise that point-to-point form, I don't know many horses who go and win by 41 lengths. Like, that's extraordinary.
The thing about it is, Emmet, there's no one alive who can criticise that race to me, because there was no race. I have yet to see. Now, he may never produce that sort of performance again, but on that day, I have watched Point of Points for 15 years. He didn't go 25 clear from the start and just win by 40 lengths. The field were with him. He sat in front, or just upsides, or just around the front of the leaders. And when he went out with another circuit to go, he started to get harder and keener, and he just started to run away with your man. And they fell in a hole 5 out. They couldn't even get to 3 out with him. And he just burned them off one by one. It was as impressive a display as I'd seen. And yes, we went to Exeter, and then he slots in and quickens clear. Someone tried to say it was a bad bumper. I'm telling you, the horse that was second in that is trained by Katie. Is it Katie Price? That's a proper horse. Placenet.
That's another one.
Watch him.
That's another one for the tracker. That's a bonus one for the tracker.
Definitely win. And then Cheltenham was just one of them days that it just got a bit too much. I think the plan might be, I don't know if it's set in stone, but I think Teeshan goes for the Persian War first time out.
Oh, wow. So he's going to go down the Captain Teague route.
Yeah.
So do you see a similar trip for him then? Their shallow hurdle, that those intermediate trips, and then maybe staying?
It kind of suits. We have so many to do left, right, and go forward with. So Paul's going to have a headache keeping them all apart and doing this, that, and the other with them. But that was the plan 10, 12 days ago. It may have changed. He may not go there. But the last thing we had said, that there was a potential that he would go. Given the rain we're having too, the ground will be safe, you would have thought, next weekend. And I'm sure, like all of Paul's, he doesn't drill them or bury them to be ready first time out. I'm sure he may improve, but he may be good enough to get away with it as well. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure he is. Well,
I'm presenting TalkSport 2's coverage of that race on the day. So I was on air for Captain Teague's win. Hopefully they'll be on air for Teeshan's debut hurdle victory as well in the Persian War. I'm looking forward to that.
Good.
A couple of other horses to just run by with you very quickly. David Pipe, friend of the show. David Pipe's got Gentleman to Boot, won his only point-to-point start at Linkstown by a wide margin.
He did. A horse that Jimmy Kelly trained. I'd been to the Curragh and seen it work, so I knew an awful lot about this horse. He loved him, jumped for fun, went to Linkstown. Don't know if it was much of a race. The time was exceptional. They say he won by 12 lengths. He did. He won by 25 lengths the way. He was just cruised. And at no stage I don't know what was in behind him, but he can only do what he's asked to do on the day. He's very impressive. He's a beautiful horse, and David likes him. So, hopefully he'll probably, because he's only 4, Brocade Racing, I saw him the Brocade Racing, he'll probably have a bumper campaign this year. Okay.
One to watch out for, Gentleman to Boot. Yeah. For Joe Tizard, a couple to ask you about. The first is Alexei.
Yeah, beautiful horse. Came from Germany, Bernard Cullinan, and put him to me. He probably should have won his last 5 on the flat. I tried to buy him last year as a 3-year-old with Bernard, and it just didn't happen. And then he became available, but he ended up in the handicap routes. He's ran 8 times and won 4, but he should have won 5. Smart horse, really liked him when he arrived here. Brocade Racing have bought him to go to Joe Tizard.
And one more for Joe Tizard. I have no idea how to pronounce this, so I'm going to put his name on the screen, and you can do it for me.
Kripticjim.
Kripticjim. Now that you've said it obviously. When I put that on my screen earlier on, autocorrect kicked in and asked me, was I okay and was I having an aneurysm?
Yeah. No, Kripticjim was trained by James Doyle, and he went to Fairy House first time out. And James had been sweet on this horse an awful lot, and he fell 2 out. He slithered. He kind of just screwed in the air, got in tight and screwed. He would have at least been second, may have even won. The winner was Bygone Era, trained by Mark, had Honeysuckle up the north of Ireland. Anyway, I can't think of his name. And Willie bought him. Now, it's arguable that he got in under the last, and the field managed to get to him. So Kripticjim could have beaten him. But I'd say if Kripticjim had stood up, he would have either beaten him or they'd have gone a long way clear and he'd have been a lot dearer. So I think he's one that comes in under the radar, and he was relatively, I won't say cheap, but he was a relative buy. I took a view that what he would have done from 2 out to the line would have made him a lot dearer.
Cosgrove. It's who had Honeysuckle.
Yes. Yeah.
Just to give him his shout out. And to be fair about it, okay, that's definitely a one.
Mark O'Hare was the owner. Cosgrove was the trainer. Mark O'Hare is the owner. Sorry, yeah.
Perfect. Couple for Jamie Snowden. One is Kosac Duderi.
Went probably arguably a lucky winner on the day, but I loved his slick jumping. He was very sharp through the race. Everything kind of looked like a proper bumper hurdle horse to start with, and then over fences. And he was a very raw, weak animal in the spring. So he was going to run a very good race. I know he won in the end. He potentially probably wouldn't have if the other horse hadn't unseated Harry Swan. But either way, I seen him at Jamie's Open Day about 3 or 4 weeks ago. He's a different animal this year. So to me, there's a beautiful animal to go to war with this year. Nice.
And Jamie Snowden does so well with those young horses.
He's one of the most improved trainers in England.
He's brilliant.
He's unbelievable. His consistency from October till April, and he just has a beautiful way with making a horse get the best out of them, but keeping their level of form. He's definitely on the upward curve, I can tell you.
And he gets horses to improve so much as well. I really like backing his horses, and I really like watching them as well. He's a class act.
He's consistent. So when you bet them, it's very rare you get a disappointing run. If he fancies them, they normally run like they should.
Yeah. That's all right. Gino, I was still kicking myself I didn't back that poor horse in the Hennessy, because he talked about him. Yeah. He was a massive price, and he was saying, this is the aim. He was telling all of us.
Let me tell you about him. We bought him as a store in the Land Rover, and we never had a horse like him in the place. And Jamie kept saying, never had anything like this. He got beaten his first 3 bumpers. I backed him all 3 times.
Oh, no.
3 times. I'm sure it was 3 times. I'm sure it was. He got beaten Market Raisin first time out. Young Page Fuller rode him. He just probably wasn't getting the trip in a bumper as such. And I thought, horse, what is wrong with you? Maybe you're not as good as you're promising. But sometimes you need to stay to win a bumper. You have to stay. Yeah. And I don't think he was truly getting there, because when we started off over hurdles, I'm sure it was 2 miles we were starting off over. We didn't waste time.
And when a horse is not staying like that, but then obviously they're able to develop and go and win a Hennessy, does that just come from you're able to strength and conditioning?
Well, it's like any personal life. The more you work on muscle, the stronger it gets. The older you get, the more it takes. It's muscle memory. And that's why them big 3 mile chasers, they're 7 and 8, aren't they? And then they become better.
Yeah.
We've had it numerous times. That's happened like that. So
when you lose a horse like that, Tom, I mean, it's obviously devastating. But I suppose the only thing you can do, because this is, I even hate saying it this way, but this is a livestock business. This is a bloodstock business, and that's going to happen. But you obviously develop a massive rapport with these horses and you care for them. But the jockey could die. The trainer could die. A stable staff could get kicked in the head. Everybody takes a risk when they're involved in the sport.
Yeah.
I think there does need to be a little bit of a pragmatic attitude to it. Like, it's terrible to lose the horse, but it's not like anybody did it intentionally. And the horse was doing what he loved, which is, and wouldn't have a life were it not for this sport.
Like this is all brilliant, but people in the industry understand that. It's the people outside of the industry that don't actually. I love bringing people that give me bullshit about how horses are mistreated. I said, okay. I said, get in your car and come to my yard and spend the morning here. They invariably leave this place going, wow, I never thought they got looked after like this.
Yeah.
So I'm an advocate for people who want to say they don't like the way horses are done. Stop talking and come and see what's happening. Once you've seen it, you still may not like a horse racing, but you'll know that your opinion of it not being looked after properly is absolutely factually wrong. And that's all I think you can hope for with people who don't like a horse racing, is that they'll then know that they can't say they're not well looked after.
See,
You're never going to win. You're never going to win the argument and make them love racing. They won't want to.
Well, my understanding is that Lucinda Russell invited people to her yard after she won the Grand National, and I don't think any of those people came because they don't want to. They don't want to see how well looked after horses are. They don't want to see that most horses are better treated than a lot of humans, and that we actually take more care of our racehorses than we do ourselves in some instances.
It's you say that, but there are people not looked after as well as racehorses.
Oh no, I'm deadly serious about that. Go.
About that, are they?
I used to say walk the streets of London and come back and tell me how badly treated racehorses are. Now it's walk the streets of anywhere.
Anywhere, yeah.
It's horrific. It's just horrific.
Absolutely.
But what you just said, I would have loved it if they had featured something like that in Champions Full Gallop. Like, actually show you the loss of a racehorse and what it does to the people around them and why you keep going.
I'm sure they will next year. The problem is that they had such a good championship and they called it champions and it all kind of led down to that. But the next one, I'm sure they'll do their things differently. I'm sure it mightn't be the same sort of tussle with the jockeys and the trainers and whatnot. So kind of, yes, but they were led down that path as well, weren't they? They were led down that narrative as well.
Oh, they were. They were, and I think if you've got the access to Paul Nicholls that you have and then you turn it into all about money, that's just a misrepresentation of what the sport is, and it's a misrepresentation of who Paul is as well, for that matter. I was really disappointed in that show. Very, very disappointed in it. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to focus on the good and winners. One I know nothing about, which probably applies to a lot of things, to be honest, is Latopix.
Yeah, Latopix. Lovely filly. We bought her. She's a 3-year-old AQPS. 16-3, big grey mare. Bought her in Arcana in July. She's a lovely filly by a real young up-and-coming stallion in Bumac Duel. So he would have, Jamie Snowden actually has a filly that's won a couple of bumpers, was placed in the mayor's bumper in Aintree. I thought this filly was going to make an absolute fortune on the day. I know she was going to, and a few little things on a veterinary panel, I think, stopped her, whereas our man passed her. So it was Dr. Differ, patients die, the filly's flying now. And when we bought her, everyone went, oh, well, we probably should have bought her at that sort of money. Because I think when you have it in your head to give a big price for one, and then certain little things put you off or put your owner off, whatever way it is. But then when you see her fall through the cracks of the floor, that's why when I like a horse, I am always standing at the acorn in a sales ring. I will stand there and wait, because I have seen this happen 10, 12 years ago. I've seen it happen in so much, where you've gone in with a big price and then it's all falling apart, but you didn't know, and it was sold for 58 grand. And you're going, oh, Jesus. So if I like a horse, I will follow it in every time, because you'll end up bringing them home. I bring home more horses home here because I want the horse and I'll sell them from here.
Well, Charlie Fellows was telling me about a Sioux Nation horse that he saw at the Breeze Ups and really wanted, and he just thought, it's going to be high seven figures. There's no point. But put the interest in anyway. Ended up getting the horse for half nothing. He couldn't believe it, and really likes her, and she won first time out. So one for the Final Furlong Podcast Army. So hopefully this fella, Latopix, will be one that will do something similar as well. Two more to ask.
She'll go for a 3-year-old bumper at some point.
Okay. All right, we're going to be keeping a very close eye on her. Just two more to ask you about. One's with Tim Vaughan, Kalium, really impressive on debut for Patrick Mullins.
Paul Botell has kindly bought this one. And yes, absolutely bolted up. Again, it was going to go for a point. And Eamon Doyle decided, sure, look, we'll go. We can get Patrick to ride it. And he went down. He won. I don't know how strong the race was, but he won like a good horse. And he got a very good race in post-rating. I think he was 114 race in post-rating, which is a high rating for a bumper horse first time out. Tim likes him. He's going well, and he should be a lovely little horse for the year.
Lovely French staying pedigree as well. So you'd imagine that's a horse who's going to be winning races. And then the last one to ask you about has gone to Philip Hobbs, and that's called Sober Glory.
Yeah, I bought him in the May sale of Cormac Doyle for Brocade Racing. But when he went to the sale, so the race was on the Sunday, and I think the sale was on the Wednesday or Thursday. So you can guarantee he left Monday night. He arrived Tuesday. He was vetted Wednesday, and he's been sold on Thursday. And on Wednesday, I like to go to the sale the day before so I can see all the horses at them boutique sales. And then I can drive home, and then I have 24 hours to kind of navigate my mind to where I'm going. That horse looked like it hadn't even had a race. So he'd done all that travelling in 4 days. And Cormac told me, he said, Tom, I'm telling you, this is a good horse. I left him short. I don't leave too many of mine short, but I got this one short. So he was just pure raw ability, he reckoned. And guaranteed the cover on the horse, having ran on Sunday, travelled to England on Monday, Tuesday, vetted and done all of this, and the horse looked like, well, he'd just done a month's canter, never mind being fit and ready to run. I thought we'd best take a chance on this horse, and it's a lovely pedigree. So I was happy to take a chance on him.
Yeah, I loved Mount Nelson as a racehorse. I know he wouldn't be everybody's Aidan O'Brien's favourite, but I loved him.
Stallion, but they win races.
Yeah.
And priced according, what are we doing? We're buying horses to win to get to a level. As long as you're not giving fortunes, he's acquitting himself very well at the money being spent on them.
Well, it sounds like he's got a nice constitution as well, Sober Glory, and takes everything in stride.
Takes everything in stride, exactly right.
That's going to be a major advantage. What do you consider to be, this is a difficult question, but what do you consider to be the best racehorse that you've been involved with?
It has to be Native River because of his tough Teague attitude. He just didn't know how to say no. He won the Denman 3 times. He won the Welsh National. He won the Hennessy. He won the Gold Cup. He won the Cotswold. He's just a phenomenal racehorse. Like, he won over £1 million in prize money.
Yeah.
You know, there's few national hunt horses that do that. So I would have to say, if hand on heart, and he's retired here with me now.
Class.
Yes, and he's winning. He's actually qualified for the Horse of the Year show in Birmingham next Wednesday.
I read that the other day.
He's taken all before him. Like, he'd be your mate, Emmet. You bring him to the pub for a pint, and he'd stand there just slurping away at it. Like, he is an amazing. He's a constitution. By God, if I could get another 10 like him to be half as good with the same constitution. He's Teague. Honestly, he just doesn't know when to be helpful or good. He's just an amazing horse.
And he's clearly he's clearly loving life in some horses. When they retire, you think, oh, well, this is great, like now they can just relax. But actually a lot of horses hate that. They don't want to relax. They want to do something else. And your fella's obviously adapted to this new life.
He went to Bond Street in London and opened a boodle shop and stood there at 8 o'clock in the morning on Bond Street in London with resting his hind leg as people are walking by, him and Rachel Blackmore standing there thick as thieves in the middle of London. He's the ambassador for Exeter Racecourse this year. He's going to Highs. He's busier now than he was when he was a racehorse. Unbelievable, I guess. But he deserves it, and I'm only happy to be bringing him everywhere. People love to see him. He went to Burley 3 weeks ago, and the crowd exploded when they heard he was there. Because he wasn't in the card. It was just a late entry and whatnot, and he wasn't in the card. And when they heard it, the place exploded. Like, he is so well known. You take it for granted exactly what he's achieved, and people outside that aren't like us engrossed in it. You just take it for granted. Tack him up there, we go out. People have dived. People want to come from London and Birmingham to see him for an hour. Like, it's frightening. It really is frightening.
I watched that Gold Cup with Tony Mullins, but Tony said to me, I want to say it was 5 fences out. So Johnson has this. And at the time, Might Bite was going so well, you were thinking, oh God, but Richard Johnson has this. It's over. But it was some tussle.
The other horse that he is a phenomenal horse, but just with this way things went, he could have been really anything. Not saying Henry didn't do a brilliant job with him, because he did, but he just seemed to be his Envoi Allen.
Oh, wow.
He won the bumper, he won the novice hurdle, he won the Ryanair, he won, 7-8 grade ones. I love that horse. That horse, just the change. He was a quirky horse, and just the change of stable at the wrong time, and then fell in Cheltenham when he was favoured for one of the big races. But he was a horse that, he was a good animal, but he just don't know. Just the way his career went in the end, the ability shone through, but he just might have reached a bit higher had he stayed where it was happening at that given time.
Yeah. And if he doesn't fall in the Turners, things are probably a little bit different as well. He probably doesn't go for a champion chase the year later, because he was essentially, they didn't want him to go for a Gold Cup when that's what Gordon wanted initially, because they had a Plutard and they had Allaho for the Ryanair. So he just kind of...
Henry done a lovely job with them.
Oh, yeah.
He would have had his plan mapped out, and it took a bit of time for them to get used to him, because he was a bit of a freak. A brilliant freak, but he had his own way of being done. So it was quite. He was an amazing horse, to be fair.
Katie Young's a regular guest on the show, and she would have been at Gordon's Yard at that time, and just devastated to lose him, but also devastated that they didn't go for a Gold Cup campaign. She just felt he just didn't settle in at Henry's early on, and obviously Henry got him back, and that was brilliant. But definitely a case of what might have been with him. So, of the horses we've talked about, is there any? Dare I even ask this now? Is there any horse that looks like this could be the next Envoi Allen, this could be the next Native River, and which would you assign that to?
That's a hard one, because unfortunately with these podcasts is that I get I'm as confident as they come, but I get some stick when it doesn't happen. But everyone was very happy to back Teeshan in the bumper at Exeter and back him for the champion bumper before he got beat. But when he got beat, how dare you? What is wrong? But, I mean, I can only, you said it at the start, gamble beware, okay? Is an opinion not going to be right all the time, but I think in the long haul, Teeshan will be fine. It just didn't happen there. I'd have, if you ask me and put me to the sword, I would say talk to the man.
Is that applying to the new Envoi Allen or the new Native River?
Oh, well, either or. You'd accept either or.
Oh, absolutely. I'd say Envoi Allen was more swagger and class, and Native River was class, but absolute stamina.
Yeah, no, I'd go with that. Yeah, I'll go talk to the man more on the Envoi Allen mole, swagger and presence.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. Very excited to see what he can do this season. And I promise you, at no point in this podcast will we ever say, bloody Tom Malone putting us away, telling us this horse is going to be a machine. What's he doing?
Unfortunately, you have no control over your guests. Okay, it happens.
Adam Mills comes in for lobbing grenades at you.
Yeah, I do. Barry gets me on every year, and we do it. And the year before, I punted up Captain Teague. And then he goes and was third in the champion bumper. It was brilliant, it was. So this year, then we do Teeshan. He goes and wins. Oh, shit, everyone's on the bandwagon. He goes, he's going to run well in the champion bumper. So I don't mind. And opinions, I like to have them. if I believe in a horse, I don't mind saying it.
Well, as Aidan O'Brien said, the game is built on opinions, and if you don't express them, then what's the point in doing any of this, quite frankly? Tom, you are doing fundraising for Keegan Kirby. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Keegan Kirby sadly lost his life last year, and he'd worked at Ditchit, and he was a good member of their team. He was a lovable kid, he was. And he wasn't brought up around horses, but he wanted to be a jockey, and he was going point to point, and they all loved it. And he'd always say, "Oh, Tom, if you ever need me on a Sunday, I'm available." And I thought it was a lovely way. And he started going riding, but unfortunately, he lost his life in a riding accident. But I was asked by Jeff Durham, would I sponsor a race on the day? I said, absolutely, and take a table. And I said, Oshie, you'll probably want me to ride in the charity race next. And he said, yes, I would actually. And I went, oh no. So like anything, I'm up for a laugh. I thought, brilliant, okay. So I've had to find a horse, which I have. And so all systems go, and I gave it a right good kick. And I'd love people to get on board, because Keegan's family are going to need support throughout, and Racing Welfare and the Injured Jockeys Fund are doing an amazing job with looking after these people. And anything we can do to give a little bit extra to these people that are normally volunteers more often than not. Some of them are full-time, but they're doing an amazing job with keeping these families together, and anything we can do. I gave it a right kick yesterday, and I managed to get over $5,000 with messing with all the boys. I know all the Wexford trainers and everything. So, and I'm jostling one off the other to say, well, he's giving more than you. What's wrong with you? So it's a bit of fun as well, but I'm deadly serious about trying to raise a lot of money for this, because it's a worthwhile charity, and they do look after people in grief. So for me, it's a no-brainer, and I'm going to do my very best in everything I do, especially with this charity.
Well done, Tom. When is the race day?
The race is on the 27th. It's the Sunday, the 26th or 7th of October in Wincanton. And the link, I showed you the link there last night, Emmet. So if I would like to kindly donate, however small, it's irrelevant. It will all make a difference. And I can promise you from the bottom of my heart, I won't forget it.
Okay, we're going to put a link into the description of this podcast, both on YouTube and into the audio description as well. You can see a video of it, or at least an image of it, on YouTube now as well. Trish will interlink that for us. I wish you the very best of luck with that. I hope it's a huge success for you. What is the racehorse you're going to be riding?
I just have to be quiet on that one for a minute. There's a lot of people will be watching this, and I'd like to keep the name of that animal quiet for a second.
Okay, that's all right.
But needless to say, Emmet, I didn't think about this one easily, but I want to win it. I don't take part. I like to win.
This is the vibe I'm picking up for you. You're not here to take part. You're here to take over. You're here to win. If you rock up that day on Pegasus, I won't be shocked.
It won't be Pegasus, but it's his 3 parts brother.
And on that bombshell, give what you can, support that. It's a very, very deserving cause. And Tom, thank you so much for your time and your insight on the show. You've been incredibly generous with both. And the very best of luck at the upcoming sales, and the very best of luck for the new jump season.
Top man. Thank you very much for having me on.
Tom Malone, ladies and gentlemen. Crowd goes wild, particularly when all those horses go in winning. Thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Thank you for watching it on YouTube. We're back with more content very, very soon as we continue our build up to the new jump season. From Tom and me, Emmet Kennedy, we'll talk to you again very, very soon. Look after yourself and each other. God bless.
The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Jeff Banks Bet. Get up to £500 refunded as real money for new Jeff Banks online accounts after your first month of betting. Use promo code FFP500 at jeffbanks.bet and buy BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Our listeners get 10% off your first month. So give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/FURLONG.